Hey, what's up and hello? This is the Chris Nicole bringing you my views on life, love, and the world of entertainment through my eyes. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on what time you are watching this live. Hello, crew. Hope all is well. Make sure you hit the like button on the way in. So, October 7th, Monday. The documentary for the Menendez brothers came out on Netflix. So you guys wanted to do separate the scripted version from Ryan Murphy versus the documentary. I thought the documentary was well put together. This was, I think, the first documentary where we both had Eric and Lau's perspective on one documentary. I've seen documentaries where it's just Eric, and I've also seen an interview where it was just Lau, but this is the first time we heard both of them. So that was interesting. Now, one thing they did say was they haven't told their story in 30 years. And I'm like, I don't think that's true. Because again, I've seen documentaries and interviews before just separately. So if this is their first time actually being on the same one together, then you can say that. But they definitely have been speaking out for the past 30 plus years. Not consistently, but you've heard from them. So, with that being said, if I had to rate this documentary, I would give it a solid B. Um, there were a couple of things that were new to me, and there's a couple of things that I kind of question. So, this may be a popular opinion or unpopular opinion, but that's the whole point of doing these reviews so we can talk about it, we can chat about it, you can give me your opinion. So let's see who is in the building. Yes, Yuli. Hey, Cassandra, how are you? Yes, I am reviewing this. I think it's important to talk about it. And from my understanding, they have a date as far as the courts are concerned. I think the current district attorney, if I'm not mistaken, in LA is reviewing their case. I want to say it's the end of November. I know Rosie O'Donnell and Kim Kardashian are definitely promoting this very heavy. Of course, TikTok has definitely talked about this case. So they're saying that it's possible that they may be released even before the year is up, if all goes well, because of that second trial that was very biased and not fair, in my opinion, based on what we saw with this documentary. So, with that being said, let's get into it. So, we start off with, of course, August 20th, 1989, and the infamous 911 phone call. And literally you hear loud crying, saying someone off to his parents. You hear Eric in the background, loud saying, Eric, man, no. Eric's dropping F-bombs. Interesting enough, though, when I was hearing the 911 call, the operator said, are they still in the house? And Lau is crying, but he's like, no, 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 no. And I'm like, yeah, they are still in the house. Like, but I find the issue. If you go back to it, she says, are they still in the house? And he quickly, when he heard that, says no. So it was interesting. But with that being said, I'm going to give a balanced perspective on this. Like I told you guys before, I still feel like the guys have served enough time. I really do. And I truly feel that they were SA'd. I do. However, I can see the perspective of some people on why they feel they were able to, quote unquote, or they felt like they were lying on the stand because of the fact that this 911 call, it was just like, you know what I'm saying? Like you would have never known, like you thought they were probably trained actors the way that they pulled that off. So I could understand to a certain extent. Let me just say that, a certain extent. But again, I'm more open-minded. Some people are just closed off, and we're going to talk about the people who were completely closed off on this in this documentary. They wasn't allowed to talk about the freaky tale during the second trial. Yes, we'll get to that. We'll get to that, Cassandra. We'll get to that. So with that being said, it starts off there. And then one thing I also noticed is that when they both introduce themselves, Eric says he's 51 years old. while Lau says he's 55. So that's telling me that they definitely did these interviews at separate times, because Lyle and Eric are only 2 years apart. So how was it that Lyle's introducing himself as 55 and Eric's introducing himself as 51? So clearly Eric's part took place years back, and Lyle maybe just got interviewed last year. So I found that interesting. It kind of threw me off. I was like, they're not that far apart. Like, they're literally like 2 years apart. So with that, interesting enough, I had this picture in my last video and I didn't even notice it because, again, my mind just did not go there. But look at the placement of the hands, unfortunately, you guys. And sadly, while we may think it's probably innocent because of the story now that we have heard, look at the hand placement. And again, trigger warning, but look at the hand placement and look at Lyle's face. So, just an unfortunate situation. So with that, Eric says, and it disturbed me that he said he's getting older and he won't live that much longer. Eric is in his 50s. Like, God willing, he will live another 30 years, at least 20 more years. So the fact that he said that kind of bothered me, because those are type of things that you just should not want to speak into existence. But of course, they go into, the whole lavish life of 90210, Beverly Hills exclusive, and it's perfect. And it's the most exclusive zip code in the world, which is true. And of course, the show Beverly Hills 90210 made it even more popular and exclusive on a national world TV level. So naturally, the thought of two wealthy people, a couple, who's, married with the family in this exclusive zip code in a mansion, it was very hard, of course, to comprehend that they were off. In people's mind out here in LA, these things can happen in Hollywood, they can happen in Los Feliz. Hell, they definitely feel like it can happen in South Central and East LA, but not beloved Beverly Hills. But it happened and people were shook, okay? But just shook on a local level. It hadn't hit national news yet. So then we end up, seeing this damn prosecutor. Her name, I believe, is Pamela. She's the prosecutor from the first trial. She's interesting. I don't know about y'all, but I felt that energy from the screen, and she's quite interesting. Hey, May. She is the true example of a career prosecutor, in my opinion. Like the true example of a career prosecutor. She is talking about how graphic the scene was. And, but again, her energy still comes off like she's bitter. She is aggressive. She definitely, is just ready to take down what she feels is a fabricated story about the essay situation. And she claims she only did this documentary because of poor Kitty, because Kitty got ran over by a husband, and then she got ran over by her sons. She's only here for that reason. I call BS. And let me explain why I call BS. Because you've had 30 plus years to talk about this if that's the case. My opinion, she did this because she knows these boys have a good chance of getting out. And one thing that I think a lot of us who are like into true crime or things like that, one thing that we have learned is that one thing that prosecutors can't stand is, especially a case that they worked on, and those people could potentially, their verdict can be overturned or they can come out. They will fight they will fight to no end to make sure that they stay there, even if some of the things they agree with, which is interesting, which is why at the end of the day, how can I put this? I feel like DA offices are definitely under a lot. And I do feel like at the end of the day, there are situations and there are cases where they really are there to get justice for the families or for, their city or whatever the case may be. But sometimes you just do have career prosecutors who are just in it for a win, in my opinion. It's just about winning the case. That's it. That's all, you know, and that's all they care about. The numbers. It's the numbers game. And in my opinion, she's still upset she didn't get that win because she was the prosecutor on the first trial, okay, where there was a hung jury. So she didn't win. And I think it still boils her that she did not win. All right. But with that being said, she and someone else is talking about how graphic the scene was, in the family room. But even as graphic as the scene was, they noticed there was no shells in the room. So we already know this part. What Eric says, though, is they didn't even bother pressing him. Had they bothered pressing him, he would have completely broke. Like at that moment, he said they had residue all on their hands. He had shells in his car. If they would have just pressed him a little bit, he would have folded. So with that, why didn't they press them? My opinion, several things. Complexion for protection and also being wealthy. Because one thing about it, especially in certain places, you don't question the rich. You know what I mean? You don't question them. Because I can't say it was because it was back in 1989 when no one would think that kids would off their parents. Because we had a case, I want to say back in 1985. It was called the Ninja Illers. Illers. And they actually hired someone to off their parents. So it's not uncommon or wasn't uncommon by 89 to hear that because they had a similar case back in 85 that did the same thing. So I don't think it was that, but they was also the Menendez brothers in a different area code. They were in Beverly Hills. So I think they kind of backed off assuming like we don't know who their family is, their parents are, whatever the case may be. Like we're not going to even question the situation. And so that was one thing that the prosecutor and the other person talked about, like, you're stupid to not even question that, especially because of where it took place. It took place in the home. So they were like, you were just dumb as hell to not even think that. So with that, I find it interesting that Eric also said in his interview with the police, because we actually heard it, he said he saw smoke in the room. And he even says there was no way that he could see smoke in a room if he wasn't there. And no one questioned him about that. So literally in October of that year, there was a writer on this documentary saying that he interviewed Lyle and Eric in October, and he said they were laughing and joking, and he thought it was weird. And, I'm sure it would be weird to a lot of people. And he said, why would they still want to live in that house? That is true. But I also feel like, like they said, they had ups and downs when it came to what happened. I'm sure there were moments where they were happy they were gone and then terrified at the same time. But he did say Lyle did most of the talking. And I believe that because there's definitely some things that we need to talk about when it comes to Lyle. And definitely you guys, please let me know how you feel about what I'm going to say. And if you agree or disagree, and we can definitely have dialogue about it. But Lyle did admit that they should not have been meeting with anyone after that happened. They were not in the emotional condition to do so. But without his father guiding his every step, he was lost. Okay. And so that also could explain the fact that he kind of lost his mind when it came to that spending spree that we clearly already, know about. So at the funeral, Lyle ends up reading a letter from his father saying that, pretty much his father was saying that I want you guys to be, good, citizens, like you guys, have a great future ahead of you, things like that. But it makes me wonder if the father wrote that. That's what kind of made me say, did the father actually write that, or did you write it and say it was from your father? That's something. And you guys let me know when you guys heard that, because it made me wonder. I was like, wow, did your father actually say that, or did you write it and that was your version of what you wanted to put out there about your father? And then, of course, they talk about the spending. And Eric said he was trying to cover up the pain. And I actually believe that. Because Eric, for the most part, they mentioned that he did get a Jeep. He may have spent, certain things, but he mainly, I think, got the Jeep and he spent money on a tennis coach to better his skills. Lau, on the other hand, went more crazy with the spending, as we know. Porsche, 3 Rolexes, you know, two polar opposites, like two opposite version of SA kids, which we hear about that often. You have one who's very sensitive, very fragile, and just really just wants it to stop. And then you have the other one who's kind of cold and kind of mean because of what has happened to them. And I truly feel that's what we have with both of them. Lau had a lot of his father's traits in him. He really did. Now, of course, we ain't talking about those type of traits, but I do believe Lau had some sort of manipulation when it came to Eric. I do. I really do. Especially with some of the things that he actually said in this documentary, where I was just like, okay, Lau, it's quite interesting. But now I see why they say, even in the scripted version and even in like certain interviews or whatever, they said Lau kind of came off angry, cold, manipulative, So at that point, I could kind of see what they were talking about, because when you think about it, when they went to San Diego to get the steal, okay, they apparently, let the prosecutor tell it, they apparently bought those by using his roommate's stolen ID. So they're trying to imply, I guess, that Lau stole his roommate's ID to get them, which is effed up. So, but again, he definitely, in my opinion, kind of came off as the cold one who didn't care about no one because of how he was pretty much treated his whole life. But to do that and to kind of put your own roommate in a bind like that, if he did that, come on, man. And that's another reason why they kept focusing on premeditated. You know what I mean? Because of the fact that if you were willing to go out of your way to do that, you were planning something. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Angela Davis. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Angela Davis, another crazy case out here in California back in the early 70s. But one of their defense, like her attorney, I don't know if you guys know the story, but she pretty much went on the run because they were trying to accuse her of actually unaliving some people at a court. And because the reason why is because the steel, because you guys know I can't say certain words, the steel that was there that was used was registered in her name. Okay. So, but one of the things that the attorney said was in his closing argument, she's not stupid. Why would she use something that's registered in her name to do this? So I say all of that to say, if you're willing to use someone else's name, then maybe, just maybe, that's why they said it's premeditated, because you planned on trying to do something and possibly get away with it and put it on someone else, or again, maybe wasn't just thinking they would never be found, but to use someone else's ID, that's troubling. So I understand why people were saying it was premeditated. Don't like the fact they was making fun of them about their SA situation, but I understand why they said that. But with that, honestly, they was better off getting them in their name, because then at that point, they could say they were nervous and, we didn't know what we were going to do, but we just wanted to have them just in case. And we did everything the legal way because it was in our name and X, Y, and Z. So at that point, what I will say is this, based on the prosecutor, and again, this is the prosecutor giving her take on this. She said they didn't have anything to arrest them, but apparently when they found where they actually purchased the steel, That was enough for them to be able to move forward when it came to the case. And then next thing you know, they're saying in March of 1990, Lau was arrested. Now, interesting enough, in the movie, they made it seem like it was really about the doctor running his mouth to the mistress, and the mistress going to the police is what really stopped everything. But let her tell it, she made it seem like no, finding out where they were purchased, where the steel was purchased, and literally it was them that did it. That's what sealed the deal. Now, Lau, in my opinion, and this is another thing too, when they were spending money. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but this is actually, you remember the old basketball and baseball cards back in the day? Someone had this old basketball card and found that right there in the circle, that was Lau and Eric, like I think months after them unaliving their parents. Here they were courtside at the game, and apparently this was used as a basketball card, and literally someone who had the card realized it was them. How crazy is that, y'all? That is crazy. But it also shows you, they were going to the games and stuff after this, living it up, just living it up. But with that, Lau says in this documentary, when they arrested him, he said, they could have called me. And he said, and he would have came down to the police station. And they made it a media circus, staged his arrest, cornered him like he was a fugitive dealer or something. And at that point, I'm like, Lyle, sir, you offed your parents. Like, keep in mind of that. And when he said that, I'm like, what would make them think in their right mind that it had been 7 months since it happened, that them calling you, you would automatically want to come down to the station? Am I the only one that's tripping? It just didn't make any sense for him to say that, but I feel like that was still a part of his delusion a little bit, and also even his privilege, where I'm just thinking, like, what makes you think they were going to allow you to just voluntarily walk into the station knowing what they had just found out? They didn't even know, what I'm saying, if you were going to be an issue with anyone else or even to yourself. No, they're not going to operate in that way. But he made it seem like it was a spectacle, honey. I don't know about that, Lau. I think I don't know if you were still in your feelings or whatever the case may be, but I just found that to be unrealistic. And y'all let me know what y'all think, because I'm just like, it seemed to be very delusional, entitled, and just so unrealistic for him to think that they were just going to allow him to come in. Because as far as I see it, if he would have known they were on to him, I wouldn't have put it past Lau to go overseas where his brother was and try to hide out there with him and his brother. That's possible, so I don't know why he said that as if, they were supposed to handle him with gloves, like, velvet gloves. Like, no, absolutely not. And you pretty much got the treatment of a black man walking down the street. So you got that experience. But I just didn't understand why he said that. I was just like, you really think they were going to do that to you and say, hey, Lau Menendez, how about you come to the station? We got to talk to you about something. Hell no. They was coming after you. Especially when of what you did and who you did it to. So at that point, they literally decided to still protect their father's image, which is like Stockholm syndrome. And in Monster, they made it seem like Lau was big on knowing there would be a big media frenzy and that they had to look good. They had to be tanned up, like he was ready for the moment of them having their big moment. I didn't get that from the documentary. So I don't know if they were trying to, of course, add little extras to it, but I didn't get that from the documentary. If anything, he seemed like he was annoyed that the media was around. But that's what, they try to make seem like in Monsters. So for me, in this documentary, it doesn't seem like he even cared about the TVs. But when they did get arrested, it went from a local frenzy to a national frenzy. Now everyone was talking about this case, celebrities and all. Now, child, Leslie Abrams, okay, Definitely Eric's attorney. Interesting enough, like 2 days ago, someone found her. She's like in her 80s, and I must say she looked good to be in her 80s. But she refuses to talk about this case, and I'm sure there's several reasons why she doesn't want to talk about it. It may still be painful for her that she couldn't get them, out. But then also remember the scandal that she had with the psychiatrist saying that she kind of forced him to say certain things when it came to what he wrote down as far as his notes and what was in, documents for the court. But with that being said, it just shows you how much women went through even back then and what they're still going through as far as being women who are successful in their career and they don't play any games. Because Leslie Abrams, she was 4'11", and child, the media called her 4'11" Annie looking orphan. And I said, that's so damn shady. This woman has been literally fighting tooth and nail and has had a successful career. She went to law school and everything else, and you gonna sit up there and just diminish her by saying she's 4'11" Annie looking orphan. Yeah. But again, they even did that with Marsha Clark, even though, of course, I was taught that I need to be on the side of OJ and Johnny Cochran, because Johnny Cochran was, of course, our hero out here, because he was always there to protect Black people when it came to cases and stuff. But Marsha Clark went through that same thing when she was doing the OJ trial. They called her a bitch. They said, you know what I'm saying, like she was just too rough. And it's just like, no, she's doing her job. So a man can be an attorney and he can be ruthless like that. But when a woman does it, it's a problem. So, but she seemed to take it in strides, Leslie Abrams. And the prosecutor that's in this documentary, she hates Leslie, okay? She literally acted like she didn't even want to mention her name, like she was taking deep breaths. And she was just like, she was like, if I really wanted to say what I think about her, I would get sued because I heard she lost all her money and I'm not losing my house. Is it just me or did y'all feel like that prosecutor was doing too much? Now, I guess it depends on what side you're on, but I just feel like the prosecutor was doing way too much for something that happened over 30 years ago. The fact that she still had that much animosity for almost everyone involved practically, it's a little too much. But maybe it's me. But with that being said, she said, the prosecutor though said that she didn't see the brothers as like scary or whatever. She just said she thought they were dumb jocks. You know what I mean? And, she was just like, I didn't see them as somebody to be scared of. And so again, that's when she mentioned that, she's only there because of how Kitty was treated. No, I think you're only there because potentially they can get out and you don't want that to happen. And then we, of course, have Jill, who is Lau's attorney. I think they did a phenomenal job in that first trial. They did. I mean, so much so that it was, a hung jury. Now, of course, they probably would have wished that, they got, manslaughter or whatever the case may be. But I mean, it was enough to convince at least the women in the jury to say, we in good conscience cannot, say guilty of first degree. Hey, baby girl Dixon, how are you? Oh my gosh, long time no see. She did come off bitter, very bitter, and very invested still 30 plus years later. So with that being said, Lau's attorney though said something that was very compelling to me. She said, for you to have the life that you came from, I'm sure it's hard for you to be in prison. And she said, Lau pretty much said that it is actually kind of easier being in here than at home. And that should just tell you the type of torment he definitely felt like he went through throughout his years as a child and as a teenager and a young adult. And another thing too, if you look at them on trial, as you can see here, they did look really pale. They looked like they were in a sunken place. They looked like there was no soul behind their eyes. Now, Eric seemed to be a little bit more like he had soul behind his eyes, but Lau looked like he was just soulless. Like he definitely just seemed like he was just done. He to me got more light in his eyes now from the pictures we've seen with him being in prison currently than where we see him here. And that could also be the stress of being in prison and never being in prison and always have to, look over your shoulders. But as you can see here, they looked sickly, in my opinion. So with that, the opening statements. What are my feelings on the opening statements? They definitely made it seem like Eric and Lau felt like that night their parents were going to off them. I don't know how I feel about that, but here's the thing. I've been blessed to not have been in that situation. And what I mean by that is I'm not a child that has been essayed. And not only were they essayed, they were essayed by their own father, allegedly, while their mother knew and did nothing, and they had to live in that house every day. We do know that when these type of things happen to children, it does alter their way of thinking and alters their mind. So it could have been a lot of paranoia as well. I personally don't think, just based off of how they've been describing their father, he was going to do something that night. And I don't think he would have never actually been the one to do it to them. Now, he may have had someone else do it, but he was too much about his power and his reputation and his ego for it to be tainted by often his own sons, in my opinion. Him actually doing it himself. So y'all let me know how y'all feel about that. So I don't necessarily know if they really felt that. You know what I mean? But I will say this. Based on the past of Jose Menendez, because they did go into what he went through in Cuba and came here, he was so determined to be successful and never lose that. You know what I'm saying? Because at one point, of course, he came from money, but it was taken away from him and his family, and they had to start fresh in America. So it came off like he would do anything for success and to make sure he keeps it and gets even more of it. So his kids saying, especially Lau saying that he said he's going to tell people if he doesn't leave his brother alone, I could definitely see him saying something to Lau. Do I see him actually he was actually going to do it? No, but I could definitely see him saying something, because no one was going to get in the way of his reputation. Like, honestly, he seemed like the type, like everyone, like his wife and his sons were his props. That's the way it came off, and Kitty Menendez was, I guess, the pretty girl who wanted a career, but it had to be placed on the back burner because she had to be the trophy wife, the mother, and Jose be the provider. So when it all boils down to it, I totally can see Jose having an issue with what Lau said to him. The man was super successful. I mean, he had home in Calabasas, he had homes in New Jersey, he had a home in Beverly Hills. And they talked about how he actually worked for Hertz, and he's the one who hired OJ for the Hertz commercials. For those who are not old enough, OJ used to be, I'm not talking about old enough. I don't think I was even born with the Hertz commercials, but I'm sure if you guys have seen OJ documentaries, he used to do Hertz commercials where he would be running through the airports and stuff like that. So their actual father hired OJ. And then, of course, he went into the music industry, Menudo, and then he went into Hollywood. So with that, that's where the connection came from, where I guess their whole bond with OJ came into play, because they were able to mention, hey, my father hired you. And, OJ probably remembered that. Now, this fool, and I refuse to call him a doctor, and him running his mouth. And if I'm not mistaken, and this is why I say sometimes, like, I love men, but men can be so stupid. I need my attorney people to let me know, because had he just told his wife if he had to tell anyone, which he shouldn't have never ran his mouth, which is why he pretty much was losing his license at the time. But had he told his wife what occurred when it came to the Menendez brothers in their actual sessions, the wife wouldn't be able to testify against him because they're married, right? Isn't that the case? I thought the reason why those type of things are beneficial is because the spouse can't testify against you. But like a dum-dum, he told the mistress, okay? And one thing that I did not know, and Lau said this, and I said, oh, hell no. Lau said he can't believe that Eric trusted Oziel in the first place because their father made Oziel sign a document that anything Eric said in his session, he would have to relay it back to Jose. Major violation. But that just shows you, you know what I'm saying, like how desperate Eric was to get it out because of how, you know what I'm saying, he was feeling at the time. And the only reason why Eric went to this psychologist in the first place is because he had committed several crimes in the Calabasas area, which in my opinion was a pure sign for help because he didn't need the money. He came for plenty of money. That was a cry for help. But of course, we didn't know those type of signs back then. Those were things that were completely ignored in my opinion back then. Let me see. As an SA survivor, not by a family member, I can honestly say that during an attack, I thought of at least 50 ways to unalive that man. Thoughts that I have never had before and haven't had since. I can't imagine being young can have that happen to me by my father and then my own mother not protecting me. Right. I absolutely agree, baby girl Dixon, which is why I said I can't necessarily. I believe they could have been paranoid because they knew how powerful their father was. I believe they could have been paranoid. I just don't think the father would have done anything. I think that he, again, with power, could have had someone do something, but they made it seem like if they didn't handle it right then and there, they were about to be unalived. And I mean, clearly that's what the whole case was about. There was no proof that that was actually going to happen. But again, those type of the type of trauma, it does alter the brain. So they really could have been thinking that way, or at least Lau, because I'm going to come with another theory on that too. At least Lau was thinking that way, but we're going to talk about that. So with that being said, we find out Oziel was about to lose his license. And he was about to lose his license during the trial, I guess. And that damn prosecutor, freaking Bitter Pam, wanted them to hold on to not like revoking his license for, I guess, the purpose of him taking the stand. You know what I'm saying? Which is crazy to me because I guess for her, if he didn't have his license at that time, he would lose credibility because it's like you clearly have been doing shady-ish in the first place to lose your freaking license. Which is interesting that she would literally do that. But again, she talks about the other side doing whatever they can to win. It seems like you guys both play the same games. But with that, apparently she said that they couldn't get the tapes that he recorded with the brothers until after the first trial. And which is interesting because I don't think that they used those tapes in the second trial either. I don't think y'all got to remind me. I don't think that they did. So it makes me wonder if there were certain things on those tapes that they felt like were going to prove and mention the SA situation. And that's why they didn't put those tapes in. Because in the second trial, they didn't mention any of it, which is so effed up. So it makes me wonder if they didn't put in those tapes, it kind of would have probably proved their case even more, whatever they said to Oziel. Now, about this damn escape plan that they talked about in Monster. Let me see what you guys are saying. As far as them spending money after their parents. Oh, baby girl, you're going to have to asterisk some of that stuff, boo. You're gonna have to ask you some of that stuff. I'm gonna have to read it, but not put it on there. As far as them spending money after their parents are unalive, they were used to that kind of money, but their father controlled it. People come into life insurance money and go crazy without anything criminal. True. But I think it was how excessive it was is the issue. I don't know if people literally within 2 months of that horrific situation would be buying a Porsche and 3 Rolexes. Like, I would even do a question mark on that. Like, no lie. I would even do a question mark and say, what the hell is going on here? You know what I'm saying? And they were extremely young, and then a male on top of that. Yeah, they definitely didn't respect men getting essayed. They didn't respect that, which is so effed up. Now, thank God, the whole culture of it has changed, but they definitely didn't respect it. And I can't even imagine you going through the most scariest time of your life as far as if you possibly are about to get the D penalty or what's about to happen to you. You didn't even want to talk about what happened to you. And then you finally say it in trial and go into great details. And at night or doing interviews, people are making fun of you. I can't imagine. I cannot imagine, like, today, if people did that to you know what I'm saying, like survivors, they would be canceled. They would for sure be canceled. But all of, like, you know what I'm saying, like the comedy shows and people like that, they were literally making fun of them when they was crying on the stand and stuff like that. They were making fun of them. But again, it was a little bit of them not believing because they came from wealth also, and they were guys. They didn't want to believe that that could happen to them. But at the same time, I truly think that 911 call took it to another level. It really took it to another level for a lot of people. But again, the boys, these were boys who lived 90210 and were at least once hanged. Exactly. I understand that, but at the same time, you weren't spending that type of money before. And again, even if like a Porsche, what do you need 3 Rolexes for? Like, seriously. Like, what do you need 3 Rolexes for? Like, you don't even have a job right now. You're supposed to be in school and you have a $70,000 Porsche, which around this time will probably be like $160,000. So I was still I was side-eyed. Like I said, I believe them as far as the essay, but even now, what the hell do you need 3 Rolexes for? And literally within, I want to say they said 2 months time, 3 months time, they spent about like $600,000. That's insane. And that was back in 89. Now, as far as this escape plan is concerned, because they were talking about that in the Monster movie. Now, they made it seem like the letter that Eric acted like, I guess he really didn't know that letter was there. But they also made it seem like that Lau put it on there. Okay, we're gonna escape and we're gonna go through, you know what I'm saying, the laundry chute, and we're gonna, get out of here. First of all, anybody who know LA County Jail know that's impossible. But furthermore, what Eric said was Lau wrote him a 17-page letter that apparently was really emotional. He said he had never seen that vulnerable side of his brother before. And literally at the end of it, Lyle said, please destroy, but he actually spelled it Detroit. And I said, bless his heart. Maybe he was just very emotional, but I was like, you went to Princeton, my dude. Princeton. Okay. So I was just like, it kind of makes you wonder if what his father said in Monster, like, I don't care if you lie, cheat, or whatever the case may be, just don't get caught. Because when I saw that, I said, now this is a Ivy League student and he's saying Detroit, but I was like, give it up, Chris. Maybe he was just emotional or whatever. But Eric said he didn't throw it away because it was a precious letter to him and he had never seen his brother in that way. But the problem is, in the letter, he confessed to what they did to the parents. So at that point, they had no choice but to come out to the family and say that they did it. Because at first they said that they was telling the family, they didn't do it and they just could not confess. But at that point, when that letter was discovered, they actually had no choice. But the problem is they made this big spectacle about them trying to escape. And I think it was purposely just to be malicious to move them so they wouldn't be close to each other. I honestly think that was the agenda, because while they were big and bold about them trying to escape, when they found out it wasn't true and they weren't trying to escape and there was apparently nothing in there, I guess, really about them escaping, they just kind of wrote a small article about it in a newspaper and kept it moving. So I honestly think they just did that because they wanted them to be on separate floors. They did not want them together. And so I think Eric does feel guilty, though, because I think he still has that burden of, if he wouldn't have went to Ozil, and even if that letter, if he destroyed that letter, like, they probably won, they would have never got caught. He probably thought they would have never got caught. But at the same time, they probably would have never been separated either, because I think that letter was giving them a reason to separate them. But honestly, I think even if that letter didn't happen, they was going to separate them, because that's just how the system can be. But yeah, so with that being said, they had to admit it. But what's so crazy is the family stuck by them. So you can't tell me what they were saying did not make any sense when the family on both sides, they had family on their mother's side and father's side giving blow by blow accounts of certain things that went on in that household. Seriously. So the psychiatrist, Dr. William Vicari, I guess is his name, who was helping the defense, went deeper as to why did they, off their parents. And that's when they really started talking about what happened in the household. And one of the family members mentions that one day, Lau, which is probably 2 years old at the time, told, Jose told Lau, jump off of the counter and he will catch him. When Lau jumped off the counter, Jose walked back and Lau fell. And that was Jose's way of pretty much telling him, and he told his son then, don't trust anyone. And I'm like, clearly you was also telling him then not to even trust his own father. And literally another family member said that Jose was so mad and literally Lau got so spooked by it, and he hit Lyle and hit him hard. You know what I mean? So it was blood related family members and in-laws on both sides. And there were no character witnesses for Jose. Even the prosecutor had to admit that there were no character witnesses. The only character witness that they could have was the secretary. Other than that, she says that he was a really awful man. She literally said that he was an awful man who raised 2 sons capable of unaliving. But to me, she was trying to come off like they was Ted Bundy. They had no violent record or history in the past. So the fact that she is just so gun-ho on just making them out to be insane is just ridiculous to me. It really is. Let me see what you're saying. I thought about it today, Chris, and these are boys who wouldn't have went out and bought a Ford truck. You know what I mean? But they did, baby girl Dixon. Eric bought a Jeep Wrangler. That's not really an expensive car. Lau bought the Porsche. Eric bought the Jeep. So yeah, it could be that case, because Eric spent more money based on what they're saying on bettering his skills to play tennis professionally than he did on the car. He bought a Jeep Wrangler. It was Lau that was buying the Porsches and the Rolexes and stuff. Eric went, he did some spending too, but he didn't go out to buy a BMW or anything like that. He bought a Jeep Wrangler. So, it's to me, like I said, 2 totally opposites as far as personalities are concerned. So that's why I'm saying, and I will talk about that when it comes to Lau versus Eric. So at that point, then literally Jose's sister, his actual sister, talks about a situation where he had Eric on a bar when he was like 2 years old swinging, and Eric was crying because he was scared, and Jose was like chastising him, like, don't be scared. Why are you crying? Why are you crying? Or whatever the case may be. And this little boy was 2 years old. He didn't know what was going on, and he was crying. He was a scared baby. So literally, it was so many examples of how Jose wasn't a good man. Like, I understand that people trying to say, well, people who literally are victims, they don't have to unalive someone. But again, if you've never been in that situation, you don't know what that mindset is. And we still do know people who literally do end up getting out of those situations and they don't unalive people. But we have heard so many situations now where people do. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's one of those things, but this prosecutor just truly is trying to find her way to make sure that they stay in prison for the rest of their lives, in my opinion. And which that's why I couldn't be a lawyer. Like, as much as people thought I was going to be a lawyer, I couldn't, because unless you were like in the top of your class, or you went to one of the top law schools or whatever the case may be, a lot of new attorneys, they do start off in like the DA's office. And and I just feel like those places, especially if you want to have a career in it, there are people there who lose, their soul being in those offices to win those cases, in my opinion. And wouldn't be able to get down with that. But but you said definitely think they should have been punished, but the judge only give first degree as a charge was a mistake, in my opinion. Well, I definitely feel like they should have had time. That's definitely, but we clearly know in the second trial that was done intentionally, just based on what everyone was saying. It was done intentionally because they did not want another loss. They did not want another loss. LA was getting hit after hit with so many things happening. So they wanted to make sure that second trial, they were going to get a verdict in their favor. So now the mistrial happens January 1994. We talked about this. And then OJ, the chase, all of that happens June of 94. But again, now just hearing the story even more and more, I can't imagine you didn't even want to talk about your deep, darkest secrets. You actually go into talking about your deep, darkest secrets. And then they say, well, sorry, you're going to have to go through this again. I can't imagine that. I really can't. But Lyle was talking on the phone with some woman who was recording him, and you hear him talking about how he pretty much needs to make something up when it comes to Oziel because of Oziel's lying. And at this point, the woman says, well, you have to be just as convincing as Oziel. And Lyle says, oh, I can do that. I can do that. I can definitely be convincing. Doesn't look good, but does that mean that he's lying about the essay, though? No, I don't think so. But at the end of the day, him saying that, a lot of people, I guess, had issues with it, but luckily that didn't even go into trial. But again, sometimes people who go through those experiences, like, I feel like Eric was just that ultimate sweetheart who really was a sensitive soul. And I feel like Lau kind of went the opposite and was very standoffish and a little bit cold because of what he went through. And sometimes people, when they go through certain things like that, they do have a dark humor, a dark side trait, not like his father, but it could be that, he was joking, but they made that into that he's lying about everything. His brother's his victim also. Yeah, I don't know. I could see why people said that, and they even continue to say that Lau was a lot like his father and Eric was more like his mother, kind of, sensitive and emotional. And yeah, so I definitely can see, and I can see, because of that dominant nature that Lau apparently had, I can see how Eric went from one dominant figure to another. Of course, he trusts his brother more, but I could see him pretty much listening to his brother on everything that needed to be done or what to do or whatever the case may be. But with that, the OJ case. Of course, he was found not guilty. And so because of that, the DA did everything they could to get a guilty verdict for the Menendez brothers. And even Leslie said when she found out OJ was not guilty, she said, this is not going to be good for my boys because it's payback time. But I love the fact that she fought to the end because she truly was in there trying to do everything she could to pretty much say, hell no, you are not about to do, you know what I'm saying, my guys like this. Like, you're not about to do my clients like this. But I personally think that situation with the psychiatrist putting her on blast on the court saying that she switched up the notes or told him to switch up the notes, I think she had to stay low key after that case and maybe not even talk about that case because apparently they said she could have lost her license because of that. Even though she was able to continue her license, I think talking about that case for so many different reasons, including what that psychiatrist said on the stand, maybe that's the reason why she doesn't want to talk about it at this point. You know what I mean? Maybe that's why. But with that, they end up being found guilty. The way that they did it was they said, no, we're not going to talk about the essay. The family, the coaches, the friends, they can't come back and testify. They left all of that out. And so the way that they did it was they said, okay, well, here's the thing. It's either a crime was committed or not. Not the reason why, not anything like that. No temporary insanity, nothing. It's just, was a crime committed or not? So because of that, the jury said, well, yeah, a crime was committed, and they found them guilty. Just like that. Now, interesting enough, they did not give them, though, the D penalty. They gave them life without parole because I think clearly, even though they told the second jury, do not look at the first, case or the first trial or whatever the case may be, they clearly knew to a certain extent about the essay that was going on because they said in good conscience, because of the allegations, they just could not give them the D penalty. So they gave them life. And so with that being said, they had one more attempt because they had been hearing that they don't necessarily know if they're going to be in the same prison together. And we talked about this because one of the last scenes in the actual Monster scripted version, a lot of us were talking about how emotional that part was and how sad it was and how they separated them. But they did the Barbara Walters interview. And I don't know if I heard this correctly, and you guys are going to have to let me know in the chat or you're going to let me know in the comments, but they made it seem like, of course, they said they did this for one last attempt to keep them together. And even Eric looked like he was about to cry because he was just like, I may not ever see my brother again. But he almost made it seem like after that actual interview, they took them out and put them in separate vans then. And they were at that point, they never saw each other again. That's how I took it. Y'all let me know. Y'all let me know how y'all took it. But it almost seemed like it was like after that Barbara Walters interview, they pretty much put him in separate vans. And he said he was screamed for his brother. And that was the last time he saw him. If that's how it actually happened, that is effed up because they knew they was going there trying to plead that, okay, look, we are going to deal with this. We got life without parole, but please don't separate us. And the fact that they went through that interview, the security and everything was in the actual room with them, and they already knew that they was about to be separated right after that interview. I tell you, our system is a mess. Our system is a mess. But it hasn't allowed them, they haven't, well, I don't know. Look, the reality is we don't really know what occurred and how they handled the first several years of prison because they did kind of disappear. I think because there was just so much going on. I don't remember hearing about the Menendez brothers the rest of the 90s. It didn't really start coming back out until social media came out. So we don't necessarily know what those first several years was like. We just do know they were separated for 21 damn years. Okay. Now, Eric said that he has pursued art in prison And he still talks to one of the first original jurors in the first trial. He even made a painting for her and sent it to her. So that should just tell you how compelling these guys were to the jury. And Lau has pursued his education and he works with SA victims in prison. So literally, and look at him. He looks good. Like, I mean, I understand that he's in prison, but he's tried to make the best of his situation. And he says that now, especially even with Oprah doing an actual episode where they talked about SA victims who are actually male and showing the pictures of when they first were SA, he said because of societal norms now, like it has made people realize that these guys could have possibly been telling the truth. And so because of that and the changes, they decided to bring them back together after 21 years. After 21 years. In my opinion, there's no doubt in my mind, okay? There's no doubt in my mind that both of them, I believe they're telling the truth. I do feel like Eric is more remorseful about what happened and what he did. He even said in this actual documentary, I don't want anyone thinking to minimize the crime that I committed. Um, I just think he's a little bit more in tune with the mistakes or the things that happen. I think he's a little bit more I can see why people gravitated towards Eric more than Lyle. I could see that. Even though they're both victims, I could see why that's the case. Now, of course, because of TikTok, this has brought relevance all over again. People want to take another look at the case. But the prosecutor, honey, the bitter prosecutor, bitter Pam, she upset about it and said, well, if we're going to try cases like this, like, let's just take a poll on, who goes to jail or not. And then after that, she pretty much says, don't try me, TikTok people. We got steel all over the house, so don't mess with me. Now I wonder if just regular folks who didn't have a freaking law license and was a prosecutor said that, how would they take that? Like the fact that lady seemed a little unhinged to me. I'm sorry. I was just like, excuse me? Like, but then again, you know what? That's the Libra in me. I'm all about balance. I don't know if she's getting hate mail. She could, because we are in the world of social media where it's trolls like crazy. She could be getting a lot of people coming at her. You know what I mean? But then if that's the case, why even do this documentary? Because to me, she didn't even act like she could see their point of view. She even said in this documentary that everything was fabricated. She said everything was fabricated for the sake of them being able to have an actual argument against what they did. And she said that she feels like only someone who is immoral would do something like that and fabricate all of this. She made it seem like she feels like all of it was a blatant lie, what they said. And I'm like, who's really immoral to not believe someone who's saying they were SA? Like, seriously, with all of those witnesses, and you even said that the father had no character witnesses, and you're still saying that it was all fabricated, is not true. Ugh. I don't know. In good conscience, I wouldn't be able to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just wouldn't be able to do it. And it I don't know. I don't know what's going on with her. Yeah, something wasn't right with her. It wasn't right with her. And I think she's still mad that she lost that first case, because she even said, I didn't win. I mean, they didn't go home, but I didn't win. I think she is still so frustrated that she did not win. I think she's so frustrated. I think she wanted that to be the career move for her, and it was not successful. And I think she blames everybody in that situation, from Leslie to the Menendez brothers. Like, she is just still so upset in the situation. Now, One thing that Lau says is that he wanted to protect his brother. He said he's kind of, kind of lost hope. He hasn't really, been hopeful, but he did say that, finally after 21 years they're back together. But he said he did all of this to protect his brother to a certain extent, but did he really protect him? Because look at where he is now. Maybe unpopular opinion, and y'all let me know what y'all think. And again, I'm all about dialogue, so I don't want people to be like, you're shaming him. You're shaming him. That's not the case. What I do feel like is this. Is it possible that their motives were different? Lau had his motives. Eric had his motives. My opinion, I just don't see the way that Eric has been portrayed based off of people who have talked about him, even in Monsters, and even the way that Eric talks, that Eric came up with this plan. I just don't think he did it. I think he went to his brother because he wanted it to stop. Now, what that means by stop, maybe them running away together, and even if they have to work at a gas station to make ends meet or whatever, I think he just wanted, a way for his brother to rescue him. I don't think he thought about that, though. I really don't. I don't think he thought about that. I think that, in my opinion, was probably loud, and because he was so angry. He was so angry that, and I think he even thinks about the fact that, was that the best way to handle it? And honestly, again, hindsight is 2020. And of course, when you're that young, sometimes, you definitely are not thinking rational, especially when you are a victim. But really, you could have possibly sat up there and left, even though if your father was that powerful, he probably would have never allowed you guys to really be up from under his thumb. Because even with Eric, he thought he was going to be able to go to Stanford and get away from his father, and his father apparently said, no, you're going to UCLA and you're going to stay in this house. So he definitely seemed to be very controlling. I don't even think their mother could have gotten away from him. Okay. I don't think their mother could have gotten away from them. So I can understand, maybe, especially in their mindset and the years of torment that they went through, why Lau possibly thought of something like that. I don't think Eric thought about it, though. But I'll tell you this much. What would have been the scenario? And let's talk about this. What would have been the scenario if Lau sacrificed himself for his brother? Meaning that he just did everything and he went to prison for it and let his brother be free, do tennis, everything else. The brother would have sat up there and got the inheritance or whatever the case may be. It kind of would still be the same thing where Eric would probably be fighting for his brother to get out, and he would have definitely been seen as someone who, did what he needed to do, so then his brother wouldn't have to continue to go through that. But yeah, when he said that, I was like, then that would have probably been a scenario that you take, as far as you making sure that it doesn't happen again, and you sacrifice yourself for your brother and you spend life in prison while your brother continues to live his life and be successful. But looking at other channels and looking at other people who are like attorneys and former detectives who actually analyze this, some people are saying that because of Lau and, some of the ways that he was thinking, he wanted to make sure that his brother was just as committed as him, which is why apparently they said when they first went in, I guess apparently he made Eric do it first. So then that way he knew that he was committed in the situation. So this is why I say that I can see why people kind of have their different views and how they embrace Eric more than they do Lau. But again, that's the reason why you have so many SA victims who have different personalities, and they have different things that, the things that happen to them. Some of them can be still very warm and very sweet, and then other ones can be very cold, very standoffish. And I think that's what you have with Lau and you have with Eric, one who was very mean, angry, hostile because of things that have happened, while the other one just became a shell of himself, and couldn't just take the pain and everything that he went through, because even in that moment after what they did, he said he instantly felt bad. He could not live with himself anymore. He was, thinking about unaliving himself because of what happened, before August 20th of 1989, and even after. So, that's just a different scenario in a situation, as far as if that would have been the ultimate sacrifice. If Lau really wanted that to happen, that would have been the ultimate sacrifice, that he would have handled all of that and let his brother live his life. Another thing is, maybe, just maybe, Lau was like, look, at the end of the day, because a lot of people still feel like money was some of the motive in it. Maybe to a certain extent, Lau was like, if you're going to put us through all of this, I'm going to sit up there and reap the benefits of this freaking blood money anyways. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's possible. That doesn't make him a bad guy with what he claims he went through, though. In my opinion, it doesn't, because at the end of the day, you're going to have the ups and downs of the emotions of what someone has put you through, especially when you're calling that person dad. So, I definitely, after this and after some of the things that Lau said, I can understand how things are portrayed, where a lot of people, like even Leslie, was like, she would adopt Eric, so to speak, because just Eric just seemed like a kind, sweet soul. You know what I mean? Where Lau, he really took after what his father told him when he jumped off that counter. He didn't trust anyone. He didn't trust anyone. Let me see. When she made that statement against the TikTokers coming at her, she had the wild. I'm telling you, but I like to say and give people the benefit of the doubt. We know we live in a social media world now where people, for much less, will troll and do some crazy things. Maybe she's going through that. And so that's why, I'm saying, she's on edge. Maybe that's the case. But to say that everything was fabricated, as if their whole defense was a lie, that just didn't sit well with me. I believe that Lau was the leader Eric followed, and Lau had just confronted his dad and didn't get satisfaction and came up with the plan. So you understand what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? And I feel like, to a certain extent, he kind of forced Eric to say, we're going to do this together. But here's the problem that I have with that. And again, I'm not victim blaming, but I think Lau knew Eric could not handle that plan. He knew emotionally, he knew Eric couldn't handle that. Apparently, Eric was already thinking about unaliving himself before that night. You know your brother better than anyone, better than your parents. Why would you think doing that, of all things, Eric was going to feel better? That's not an Eric's character. And I feel like he knew that. You know what I'm saying? And, if Lau was that closed off and having to think of, we did what we did, you know what I'm saying? Because look at how they were treating us. If he was closed off and didn't want to have those conversations with Eric, and Eric was struggling, that's why he went to Ozil. But I think he knew. Eric couldn't handle that. So I can see why, at least he said, did I really protect him? Because look where he is. Yeah, because he also couldn't handle what happened. He couldn't handle it. Lau clearly was able to handle a little bit better. At least publicly, he was able to handle it, I guess, a little bit better. He did say he went through his ups and downs, and crying at night, and I believe it, but I think he knew his brother was gonna struggle, and I think the way that he felt like he could help his brother to try to not struggle was by the material things. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's what he felt would actually help his brother. And it didn't. And it didn't. However, do I feel that they need to be out? Absolutely. I still feel that way. Like, there's no way you have no character witnesses. You have one of the guys from the Menudo group who claim what he did to him. I it's 34 years, I think. Is it 30? Yeah, 34 years. It's time. It's time. And hopefully by the end of November, we will hear good news. We will hear good news that, time has been served. I don't know if they're necessarily going to get the DA's office to admit that they did things unethically when it comes to that second trial. I doubt they'll admit that, but at least at this point they could just say time served and they're free to go, because it's not like these boys are going to come out. Boys, they're no longer boys, they're men. It's not like these men are going to come out to an inheritance. Apparently all of that money is gone. Apparently Jose was in a lot of debt with all of the houses and stuff that he had, and they spent a lot of that money on their trials and on their appeals. So from my understanding, they're coming out to nothing. So they would literally be like your regular 9 to 5 citizens, just like the rest of us. And a lot of people living paycheck to paycheck. Apparently that would be them. The only way I could see them, of course, being able to make some money is because they could really sell their story, which is possible. Oh, that could definitely be possible, especially with Rosie O'Donnell and Kim Kardashian behind them. They may be able to get a deal, book deal, TV deal, something like that. Make a lot of money off of an interview, so that may be able to help them. But that $14 million inheritance, $14 million in 1989, 1990. I can't even imagine what that is today. I'm gonna assume about a good 100 million. I'm going to assume that man was definitely making some money, but he was also in a lot of debt. So this just proves that don't assume that people living this lavish lifestyle that they just automatically got it. A lot of them could be in debt. Because apparently that's what he was doing. He was in debt. And the thing is that he was probably able to mask it because he was constantly working. But once he was gone, they were able to see that he had a lot of debt and a lot of things they needed to pay off that was coming out of that trust. Let's see. I think they have served more than enough time. They do. Yeah. Because honestly, if they were tried today, and they said this, if they were tried today, they would have got I don't know if I said it already on this live, but I'll just say they would have gotten MS. They would have gotten the lower one. And I don't know what the actual max is for that, but I would assume they would have probably got anywhere between 10 to 25 years, maybe even 10 to 15 years for MS. So yeah, if they would have had this trial happen today, or hell, even 5, you know what I'm saying, to 10 years ago, they definitely wouldn't have got first degree. I don't think so. Let's not forget we got Kim K on the case. Wait, what do you mean by we? You talking about TikTok? You talking about TikTok, baby girls, with the social media and stuff? I don't even know how she got on the case, but as far as I see, I wouldn't be shocked if they knew those boys, because the fact that they had the connection with OJ, and who was OJ, one of OJ's best friends, Robert Kardashian. They all probably lived and kind of was in the same circle. So I wouldn't be shocked if Kim knew them, had been around them at one point in her lifetime, definitely knew about the case. I wouldn't be shocked, because a lot of those times, all of those circles kind of are in, they're in the same circle. So, and again, that connection with OJ, and apparently I think Eric mentioned OJ coming to their house at one point. So they definitely could have been aware of this. Definitely, she could have been aware of this and maybe even knew them. I would like to see if she does an interview. I know Rosie O'Donnell has been doing an interview in regards to them. But yeah, they're going to have an actual date. I want to say it's right after Thanksgiving or right before Thanksgiving. that we will find out if they're going to release them or not. And I truly wish them the best. I really wish them the best. It is amazing to me if you see this picture, because I've shown this picture before. Eric has always had just always this uplifting look on him, even when he just seems like a really sweet guy. But like I said, when you look back at these pictures when they were younger, like Lau looked like he had his soul like taken out of him. But when you look at him now, look at him. Like, yes, he's older, but he just seems more happy and more content and has more purpose. And he did mention that he feels like he has more purpose and stuff. So I really hope that, I'm going to speak positively. I hope that when they get out, Lau continues helping SA victims. I hope that Eric continues his art and also speaking out more about, SA victims. I really wish them the best of luck. And I really hope if they do get out or when they get out, they can be advocates for getting other people out who have been through the same situation and they didn't get a fair trial. Because you're not going to be able to convince me they're the only ones. Like, I'm sure there's a lot. I'm sure there's a lot in prison who have literally gone through the same situation and they just tossed a book at them and just literally threw them away in the system and no one has cared. So I hope that they really take that and they're truly able to help other people hopefully fight their cases. Oh, she was using her celebrity to try to get them out. Yeah, and I mean, isn't that something that, like, to me, if you're gonna be a celebrity and you're gonna have how many followers she got? Maybe 300 million. This would be the best way to use your celebrity in a positive light. Rosie O'Donnell too. So I commend them for wanting to sit up there and bring this to the forefront. And but Leslie and Jill, their attorneys, they really don't want to talk about it. Leslie was just seen maybe 2 days ago. I think posted it. She literally, someone saw her, and again, she looks good. Like, she's of course gained weight, but she looks good to be 81 years old. I would have never thought she was 81. But when they asked her a question, she said, "I'm not talking about my clients." And like, they asked her if she saw that movie, and she was like, "I didn't see that shit." Like, she was like, "Hell no, I didn't see that." And she kind of got in her car and left. It may just be too painful for her to talk about. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's probably the case that still sits with her, where she's just like, "I wish those boys were out." Or again, she's afraid. Well, at this point, ain't no reason to be afraid. She retired from law, I think in 2013, they said. So it's not like they can really do anything to her at this point. But yeah, I think that it still bothers her. It still haunts her. And there was even a quote at the end of this documentary that pretty much said that, the past is the past and she wants to leave it in the past. It's the up to the court to decide at this point, and the courts made their decision. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm hoping. I think she still, who did a prison visit with them? Who's she? Because we talking about a lot of people. You talking about Leslie, you talking about Kim Kardashian, you talking about Rosie. I'm sure Rosie and Kim have gone to see them. For sure. I'm sure they definitely have gone to see them. They're probably the ones behind this documentary. Because isn't this very timely that not only this scripted version came out, I don't know if the scripted version helped them, but not only the scripted version came out, but then the documentary came out literally a month or two before they're supposed to find out if they're going to be released or not. Which, even though I didn't like the scripted version, again, it could have been purposely made that way and made it so salacious and so uncomfortable that people were going to start talking about them just so they could see the documentary and get the real story. People good for that, because at the end of the day, all publicity for some people is good publicity. And it made them say, okay, here's this salacious version. What would Eric and Lau actually say? Oh, okay, well, you can watch that on October 7th. So I think I read a while back that Lau is married. Does anybody know? Yeah, they're both married. In fact, Lau was married to one woman, got divorced, and now he's married to another woman. Eric has been married to the same woman. That's been the only marriage he's had. I feel like when I was doing my research, He got married like in 99 or something like that. I believe the lady's name is Tammy. She already had a daughter, like a 2-year-old daughter. Eric claims that girl as his own. He's been married all of this time. I feel like he's been married for a good 20 plus years. So they're both married, which is why the monster scripted show disturbed me, because they were trying to imply all these things about Eric. And I said, this man has never said that he's gay. And even if that is the case, it is not your job to be outing someone, but he's never said that. And I think because he's just more of a sensitive soul, unfortunately, they want to assume men that cry or men that are more sensitive, they just automatically want to put that stereotype on them, which I think is so unfair. But both of them are married. I mean, they haven't, of course, been able to have their own children, like related children, blood related children, but they're married. Which is another thing too, because one thing about men, their equipment is always going to work regardless. So they can really get out of prison and still have kids. Like, let's just keep it real. So, and if that's what they want to do, I wish them the best. I really do. I wish them the best. So with that being said, you guys, that was the documentary. Pretty good documentary. Definitely some things that were said that kind of, like shocked me, or people who still are very bitter and upset about certain things. And again, I guess because we are in a world of social media, if you have been kind of, living your life, and then next thing you know, TikTok is talking about this case all over again, and then they start looking at the old trial and they see the prosecutor literally there, I wouldn't be shocked if people have probably been coming at that lady. So maybe that's why she's coming off that way, because she's tired of the talks, I'm saying, or not even the talks, people coming at her, things like that, probably sending her letters. Like, who knows what she's going through. But at the same time, that's the same stuff that Eric and Lyle probably go through too. But even with that, I just in good conscience couldn't say that everything that they said was a lie or just was fabricated. Like, I wouldn't be able to say that. That's not in my nature. I don't think that's anyone's place to just automatically say that victims are lying. I don't think that's cool. It was a great conversation, and we're going to continue the conversation. We are. For those who are, replay gang, by all means, what I'm saying, even if it's an unpopular opinion and you don't agree, by all means, leave your comment below. Just be respectful. I'm open to hear different opinions and a good conversation about this. But overall, I think everybody that has been on here talking about this, I think everyone feels the same way. It's time for the boys to go home. They need to come home, and especially before the holidays, I think that would be the biggest present ever for their family. So with that being said, please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you on my next video. Toodles.